From Europe, from the heart of Europe, it's Ukraine. And today, the saddest day of Russian invasion, occupation of our country. Let's watch how was this day.
Explosions and fires raged in Kyiv region in the evening and overnight. An oil depot in the village of Kalinivka-Fastivsky district was under fire. As a result, there was smoke in Svatoshinsky and Holosivsky districts of the Ukrainian capital. The authorities of Kyiv urge residents to keep windows closed and, if possible, not to go outdoors, as well as to turn on the air conditioner or air purification system.
Mom, come and see.
The Ukrainian military continues to mop up Irpin, Bucha and Hostomel from the occupiers. Irpin is still under the fire of mortars and Grad rockets, but almost 80% of the city's territory is already controlled by the armed forces of Ukraine and the territorial defense forces. The defenders have liberated the village of Lukyanivka-Barashevsky district to the east of Kyiv. They have eliminated about 40 occupants, 9 AFVs and 3 tanks.
According to the data provided by the captive, there were about 200 Russians. Some of them have remained lying in the soil here, and some of them fled.
Heavy shelling continued in Kharkiv overnight. Artillery, mortar, tank and rocket attacks. There were more than 50 attacks in total. The airport terminal was damaged. A large fire broke out in one of the residential areas. The city was covered with smoke by morning. Today the occupiers shelled one of the supermarkets. Rescuers are eliminating the damage to residential areas. The attack on Izum also continues. The city center and 2 automobile bridges over the Suez-Donets River are partially destroyed. Sectors of the city on the north bank have been seized by Russian troops, while sections on the south bank are under Ukrainian control. To bypass the blown-up bridges, the occupiers built 2 pontoon crossings. Yesterday they also destroyed the TV tower. Fires broke out in Chernihiv overnight after the shelling. A pedestrian bridge was damaged.
Unfortunately, the pedestrian bridge, which is being fired on with artillery of the enemy, is currently in danger and traffic is closed, both pedestrian and automobile. We are gaining courage. We are doing everything we can to make sure that we will win as quickly as possible.
The attacks in Rubizhno-Luhansk region lasted through the night. Rescuers were unable to extinguish the fires due to the shelling. Houses were damaged and, according to preliminary information, there were 2 victims. The occupiers launched 2 missile attacks on a military unit on the outskirts of Dnipro yesterday evening. The buildings were significantly damaged and fire broke out. Rescuers are removing the debris and searching for people. Explosions were also heard in one of the districts of Mykolaiv last evening. The Ukrainian military shot down an occupier's cruise missile.
It is becoming something of a tradition in the region to shoot down 1 missile each night. It was not allowed to fall down, not allowed to reach. Just somewhere over the river. This is what crashed. Just the air defense system was working.
The night before, the Ukrainian military struck for the 10th time at the Chernobyevka airfield, temporarily occupied by the Russian military in the Kherson region, which the enemy uses as a command post and a hub for aircraft and helicopters. The invaders started to leave in droves.
And today, U.S. President Joe Biden arrived to the Polish city Rzeszów, and which became one of the first reception points for Ukrainian refugees. Now you can see Joe Biden and you can see Andrzej Duda, President of Poland. They give a press conference and tell about all the situation and their discussion. Right now, let's talk to our guest. He joined us online. It's Andrei Deshits, Ambassador of Ukraine to Poland. Andrei, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, hello, I can hear you.
Thank you that you joined our program today. And my question connected absolutely, you understand that with Joe Biden's visit to Poland, how do you think, what results it will give us, it will give Ukraine?
Okay, first of all, we are very much looking forward for the visit of President Biden to Poland because it's twofold visit. First of all, it's of course to Poland, and the issue of Polish-US relations will be discussed, but it's also important for Ukraine because the Ukrainian topic will be on the agenda as well. What we should expect regarding the US-Polish relations, the Poles are expecting more security guarantees from the United States. And they expect that President Biden will announce that if Poland is attacked, that the United States will protect Poland. But what is important for Ukraine, of course, and it's the two things that two important factors. One is the military support of Ukraine, and it's military aid to Ukraine. First of all, the issue of the non-flying zone, creating of the non-flying zone, and more military equipment and more military staff sending to Ukraine to support Ukraine. And the other aspect of the visit is the humanitarian one, is the issue of helping Poland to cope with the number of high number of Ukrainians. It's about 2 million people which are now residing in Poland. Of course, both topics are important, humanitarian and security military issues, but for us, for Ukraine, the security and military issues is the priority.
Mm-hmm. Also, speaking about humanitarian help, we talked to our correspondents in Rzeszów in Poland, and they talked to USAID, which help us. And let's watch a small interview.
I'm originally from Donbas region, and now we live in this condition the second time when we relocated from Donetsk and then continue our life in Kyiv city, and now we relocate from Kyiv to Uzhhorod. So it's very dramatic situation for all of us, but the most dramatic situation for people who live in Mariupol now, and we know about the position of Russian Federation blocked our humanitarian aids from Kyiv, from Ukraine, for this average people. So how you can impact, influence for that, and how to, give these people who live in Mariupol something like hope to get foods and water now?
Yes. I've spent a lot of time on the phone today with various humanitarian organizations who are perched and ready to put food into the town, and not just food. As you know, medicines have run short, water is inaccessible in many parts of the city, but again, as you said, the challenge has been that while the Ukrainian government has been very, very eager to create safe passage and to have a ceasefire in order for food and supplies to get in, the Russian Federation has shown that it wants to approach Mariupol as it once, with the Syrian government, approached Aleppo. And that is all we have seen from them, despite countless promises. There have been heartbreaking scenes of Ukrainians in Mariupol being told that humanitarian pauses were going to occur, showing up, often with elderly, with children, the mother I can't even imagine, showing up, and then the shelling starts. Almost like it was never serious at all. And so you asked how I could give the people hope. All I can tell the people of Mariupol is that we are working around the clock to try to muster as much diplomatic pressure on the Russian Federation as possible so that Putin feels he has to let food and medicine into innocent people. And obviously the United States and the European Union countries, along with Japan and Australia and democracies around the world, are imposing very steep costs on the Russian Federation's economy and on President Putin and his cronies. So we need China, we need Beijing, we need India, we need countries that have maintained friendly ties or neutral ties with the Russian Federation to be raising their voices on behalf of this urgent, desperate humanitarian need. And we will be ready. The humanitarian groups are ready. USAID has supported them in scaling up their assistance. They are ready to go. There is one thing that stands in the way, and that is President Putin.
Thank you.
So it was Samantha Power, administrator of the USAID, United States Agency for International Development. Today, what do you think about humanitarian help of USAID, of Poland? What can you say?
So it's very important that the United States is declaring its support to increase funds for the humanitarian aid in Poland, and also the funds for humanitarian aid for Ukraine. We are here in Poland having about more than 2 million people who need help, who need aid. Of course, the Polish government was very sufficient and Polish people were very friendly and warm welcoming Ukrainians who crossed the Ukrainian-Polish border and now are staying in Ukraine. They were very well received, but it's not enough. These emotions. So that what we need, what people need here in Poland, is the housing, is the schools, it's the medical cover. Of course, the Polish government is trying its best, but it's not enough. The Polish budget, the budget of the Polish state was not prepared for such a big wave of migrants. It's the biggest wave of migrants since the Second World War, and it needs a joint efforts of all the countries who are ready to support Ukrainians in Poland. And other issue is, of course, the issue of sending humanitarian aid to Ukraine. We have established a very good logistic here in Poland. We are receiving the humanitarian aid from about 40 countries already, and with in cooperation with Polish government, Polish official institutions. We have a number of hubs as well as individuals, Ukrainian business also establishing hubs. We are receiving here help and then unpacking it and packing to the trucks and delivering it to Ukraine. But what we need we need to be sure that this aid will get to the recipients, to those who are in need. And then again, I'm coming to the same issue that in addition to the humanitarian aid, we need military and security guarantees and support.
Andrei, what do you think? What else we should wait? We can wait from Biden, from Poland, from NATO, for example. I mean, on diplomacy level, next steps, maybe more strict, maybe more strict.
Okay, more strict. Today, the Prime Minister of Poland, together with his colleagues from Czech Republic and Slovenia, has announced the plan of 10 points of more, which foreseen more strict measures and sanctions against Russia, and it's still an option for other countries to use this pressure of sanctions on Russia, which will finalize in stopping the war. But if this plan will not work, then we have to be prepared to create or establish a mission, a peacekeeping military mission that can be established in Ukraine. It's a NATO mission or mission of the NATO member states.
Thank you that you joined to our program today online. I'll remind to our viewers it was Andrei Deshits, Ambassador of Ukraine to Poland. Also talking about the situation now in Poland, a visit of Biden to Poland. Also there work my colleagues Alexei Matsuka, and also he talked to representatives of United States Agency for International Development. Also, let's watch a small interview.
Factors for independent media is how do they stay sustainable? How do they stay alive during this conflict, during this war? The same with civil society, and that's one area that we're very eager to continue supporting throughout the country in the east, but also in Lviv, which is a media hub for Ukraine as well.
And some of that also involves, sorting through some of the banking issues have been so challenging, right, for people to continue.
It's really important to show you the real picture, what's going on now in Ukraine, to show a real situation here, and it's really important to talk to the whole world. Our President Volodymyr Zelensky talked to different countries, to governments, and also he talked to European Union Council. He addressed his speech. Let's watch a small part of it.
Все почалося 24 лютого з Росії, коли полетіли ракети рано вранці проти наших мирних міст. Люди ще не спали, смерть вже прийшла. Росія направила проти нас бронетехніку, завезла в Україну декілька тисяч танків. Не перелічити, скільки з них вже згоріли, скільки ще можуть вбивати нас. На наших людей падали бомби з літаків, які піднімалися з Білорусі. І там навіть не визнавали, що це зробили вони. Росія захопила Чорнобильську станцію. 24 дні звідти не випускали персонал. Уявіть, 24 дні люди жили на такому об'єкті, працювали на такому об'єкті. Все наші люди, щоб у Чорнобилі більше нічого не сталося страшного. Щоб не було катастрофи. А російські військові тримали їх у заручниках. Російські танки стріляли по Запорізькій атомній станції. Росія ударила ракетами по Бабиному Яру. Зруйнувала вже більше 230 шкіл і 155 дитячих садочків. Вбила 128 дітей. Била ракетами по університетах, спалює з реактивної артилерії житлові квартали, цілі міста, села. Просто в попіл. Нічого немає. Російські військові вбили журналістів, хоча бачили напис «преса» на них. Можливо, їх не вчили читати, тільки вбивати. Росія заблокувала Маріуполь. Це блокада, яку ніхто не міг уявити у наш час. Сотні тисяч людей без води, без їжі, під постійними обстрілами, під постійними бомбардуваннями. Російські військові свідомо підривають лікарні, пологові будинки, укриття. Вони підривають навіть укриття. Уявіть собі. Точно знаючи, що там ховаються люди.
Yesterday was NATO summit. How it passed also will tell my colleague Alexei Matsuka. He was there and he saw everything by his own eyes.
If Russia succeeds in the Ukrainian war, it is certain to launch an offensive against NATO member states. This was the message delivered by Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky via video link in Brussels on Thursday. And there at headquarters, everywhere are signs saying we are NATO. But Ukraine is not.
Я впевнений.
I'm sure you already understand that Russia is not thinking of stopping at Ukraine, willing to go further.
Zelensky was heard in the hall by the US President Joe Biden, French President Emmanuel Macron, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and British Prime Minister Boris Johnson. All of them arrived in Brussels on March 24, exactly 1 month after Russia started its war against Ukraine. As they say, an emergency summit.
We are determined to do all we can to support Ukraine. But we have a responsibility to ensure that the war does not escalate beyond Ukraine and become a conflict between NATO and Russia.
Right now, Volodymyr Zelensky has put everything into place. This is what his speech to the representatives of NATO countries in Brussels looked like. He says that it is clear that Ukraine is not a member of NATO, and NATO has no obligations to protect our country, but the alliance itself needs the protection of Ukraine anyway. And decisions of individual NATO member states looks weaker than collective decision on behalf of the entire alliance. It is worth to mention that Volodymyr Zelensky softened the rhetoric towards the alliance compared to his previous speeches and concentrated on explaining to the allies that their attitude towards Russia is mistaken.
І я не звинувачу зараз НАТО.
I don't blame NATO. You shouldn't. It's not your missiles and bombs that are destroying our cities. There were phosphorus bombs today that killed Ukrainian children. I just want you to know that the alliance can still prevent Ukrainians from dying from Russian strikes by providing us with all the weapons we need. Yes, we are not in the alliance, but I'm not making any claims. But Ukrainians have never thought that the alliance and the alliance states are apart, that in matters of life and death alone you can be a force, but together you cannot, that NATO may also be afraid of Russia's actions.
The Prime Minister of Slovenia, Janez Janša, clearly described ways to support Ukraine. Those on NATO's eastern flank understand the real situation in our Eastern European region better than anyone else.
I think that there are 4 things Ukraine needs the most. One is a hope. and that they are not abandoned. Second thing is our modern weapons. Third thing is money, to survive in this situation where economy is disturbed. And fourth thing is humanitarian aid.
Washington as well is assessing the situation. US and NATO intelligence agencies have not detected any activity by the Russian military that would suggest preparations to use nuclear weapons. The New York Times reported, citing a senior US administration official.
Vladimir Putin has already crossed the red line into barbarism, and I think it's now up to NATO to consider together the appalling crisis in Ukraine, the appalling suffering of the people of Ukraine, and to see what more we can do to help the people of Ukraine to protect themselves, see what more we can do to tighten the economic vice around the Putin regime. And that's
NATO is a collective body. All decisions here are taken by consensus of 30 member states. And if the Polish Prime Minister offers to start a dialogue on the creation of NATO peacekeeping mission for Ukraine, it does not mean that this idea can ever be realized. And Stoltenberg himself has repeatedly given a negative answer to this request. Apparently, the distance between Brussels and Warsaw, and especially Kiev, gives it away. The closer to the front lines, the more realistic the proposal for deterring Russia look. But the further away from Mariupol and Chernihiv, the less can be heard the cries of pain and tears of Ukrainian women and children who suffers from Russian shelling. Oleksiy Matsuka from Brussels for UATV.
We know lots of stories from different countries. I'll remind you that only in Chernihiv city, 200 people were dead, were killed because of this Russian occupation of Ukraine. And we also had an interview with Diana Burke. She was local from Mariupol, and let's watch what she told us. And now we will wait for our new guest.
Me and my art platform, we were making a lot of visibility for this problem. And thanks to many international funds and missions who were helping us, supporting us with this gender equality projects, cultural projects for democracy. And we were really thankful for that. And now I would want to say, to be the voice of Mariupoliers, of those who are left behind, who cannot speak, who are just totally blocked. I want to say, do something. Now we don't need your money. Now we don't need nothing. Just we need those lives. I want you to be here with us, just like you wanted to. You helped us sustain the democracy in Mariupol. But now it's not about democracy or gender equality. Sorry. Although it's 8th of March. Now it's about humanity and about lives. Any international fund that could do something, and I know that you could, please intrude, please involve.
It's really important to do something. Now our new guest joins us online. It's Lily Chilitska, Media Initiative for Human Rights Analyst. Hello. Can't hear you now. Can you repeat, please? Some problems we have with sound. Maybe you can turn off your ears. Maybe we can hear you better then. Yeah, please. No, can't hear from your phone or from your notebook. Just turn this phone out. Pity, can't hear you now, Lily. We will call you once again, and now we will show our viewers one more material. Diana Burke said that it's really important now to do something. All the people do everything that they can do. And for example, chiefs from Turkey have deployed a field kitchen in the city of Lviv in the west of Ukraine. They give hot meals for internally displaced persons. Let's watch the material.
We're now preparing our national soup, chobra, for all the people who need it. There will also be fries with lavash and our drinks, ayran and lemonade.
Mesut and 2 other cooks arrived from Turkey almost immediately after the full-scale invasion of Ukraine by Russian troops began. At first they cooked and distributed food at the Ukrainian-Moldovan border, when a queue of people wishing to cross the border formed there at the beginning of the war.
I'm always happy to help people, it's my mission. We are always willing to come anywhere and at least provide people with good food.
Every morning, cooks set up a field kitchen near the buildings where the local authorities temporarily sheltered displaced people who were forced to leave their homes because of the shelling. Olena, together with her granddaughter, arrived in Lviv from Kiev 3 weeks ago. The woman says such help is very important now.
Прекрасно. Суп просто.
It's very tasty. Shortly before the war, my granddaughter tasted lavash like this in Istanbul. We are waiting to go home. I really want to go home. I can't wait any longer.
This moving kitchen was installed in Lviv at the initiative of the Disaster and Emergency Management Authority of the Ministry of Internal Affairs of Turkey. Such a large field kitchen can provide food for almost 10,000 people during the day.
Our goal is to activate help for people living in Ukraine. This is a humanitarian mission. AFAD not only works in emergency situations, but also takes action on humanitarian issues. This is the fourth day in a row we have been in Lviv. We cook hot food and distribute it to all the people who live here who are in need.
This field kitchen will be moved from one IDTP center to another. Also, the AFAD organization transferred 45 trucks of medical aid to Ukraine. Since the beginning of Russia's large-scale aggression against Ukraine, 58,000 Ukrainians have already arrived in Turkey. Reported by Olena Shustova, Julia Bil, UATV News.
And we'll give you some official information from the Bankova. Let's watch.
Шановні українці, доброго ранку.
Dear Ukrainians, good morning. Today is March 25th, 2022, 9 a.m. And we begin a new day and new plans for humanitarian corridors. As of today, 2 humanitarian corridors have been agreed. From the city of Mariupol to Zaporizhia for those who will be leaving by their own vehicles. There will also be centralized evacuation by buses for Mariupol residents, which is planned from the city of Berdyansk. The gathering point is the sports complex at 27 Melitopolske Highway. 84 buses are now at the entry to the city of Berdyansk. We will do everything in our power to ensure that the buses filled with our Mariupol residents arrive in Zaporizhia today. At the entry of Berdyansk, a gasoline tanker is also blocked. After its admission into the city, Mariupol residents will be able to refuel their own vehicles at fueling stations located at 4A Schidny Avenue and 87B Melitopolske Highway. Another agreed road is from Melitopol to Zaporizhia. The site of gathering is the fire station number 9. Buses for evacuation with humanitarian aid arrived in the city in the morning, and after the unloading of humanitarian cargo will be served to the gathering point. Have a productive day, everyone. Let's work to win. Everything will be Ukraine. See you tonight.
And we will try again to talk to our guest online, Lilia Chulitska. Can you hear me, Yulia? Oh, sorry, and really pity that we can't hear you. We see that you talk to us, and really important theme should be with you about evidence of Russia's crimes and international courts. Maybe try again to say something. No, pity, really pity. Okay. We don't stop on this. We will try to call you once again. Maybe we'll hear you then. Maybe if not today, I'll ask you tomorrow to join our program because this topic is really important, which we wanted to talk about with you to talk to you about this. And again, let's try and again. Just
can you hear me? Yeah.
Oh,
no?
I can hear you. Yeah.
You can hear me. Good. Wonderful.
I can hear. Yeah. Oh my
perfect.
God. You know, it's really sometimes have some technical problems, but we all understand and the whole world understand that there is war now in our country, so there can be some technical problems with internet. It's okay in this situation. So talking about the situation now and talking about the evidence of Russian crimes, we have lots of them. In which international courts, in which courts we already sent this evidence and we wish we will be able to send maybe later, and when?
Okay, I'll try to answer your question just the more precise that I can. So Ukraine has filed really a number of appeals to the court and to the law and different lawsuits against Russia after its attack on Ukraine on February 24th. So there's the European Court of Human Rights, its International Court of Justice, and its Criminal Court. All that is done for the protection, first of all, of the state interests and citizens' rights. It is the main point, and of course, to bring to justice the military command and high-ranking Russian officials. We are cooperating with the Ukraine 5 AM initiative, and we are joining this initiative that consists of 16 organizations, human rights organizations in Ukraine. And we are now working on documenting crimes, sending these appeals, lawsuits. There is I can name you some examples of what have been already done on this track. So, for instance, to the European Court of Human Rights, on March 1st, Ukraine filed a separate lawsuit that was demanding Russia, of course, to stop its military aggression against Ukraine. And it was completely satisfied. So despite the fact that Russia is not more belonging to the European Court of Human Rights, and of course, so it was excluded from there, but the cases were submitted before the March 16th. So when it was excluded, so now they will be considered by the court. The second example is, for instance, the UN International Court of Justice. That is really highly important because on February 26th, already 2 days after the full-fledged war has started, Ukraine filed a complaint against Russia's violation of the Convention on Prevention of Genocide and Punishment of Genocide. So it was Russia's statements, by the way, about the genocide that Russia used as an excuse and as a reason to invade and to use force against Ukraine. So now we want it to work against it because it's violation of the international humanitarian law. And therefore, refuting such allegations in the international court is really extremely important. One more example, it's I think that many people have heard about that. It's International Criminal Court, and the prosecutor Khan in his prosecutor's office, who initiated great full-fledged investigations regarding these cases. So numerous pieces of evidences of war crimes and crimes against humanity really committed by the representatives of Russian Federation on the territory of Ukraine have been under preliminary review at his office at this International Criminal Court prosecutor's office. And they are already since April, as far as I remember, April 25th, 2014. So in particular, these events during the Revolution of Dignity, the crimes in the Donetsk and Lugansk regions, crimes in Crimea. So everything is there under the investigation. And now, of course, on February 28th, the ICC prosecutor, the prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, he stated that he was ready really to apply to the chamber of this International Criminal Court and in order to launch some full-fledged, investigation into the situation of Ukraine. And very fast, 39 ICC member states, it was on March 2nd, they appealed to the prosecutor regarding the situation in Ukraine, and it helped to start this process. So now the investigation into the situation in Ukraine starting from November 21st, 2013. So more about this different issues.
Lily, how can you think? Just tell me, what do you think? Is it possible? Can be Putin punished? In which way? In which court?
We know a lot about this now, the process in Hague, in Netherlands, and all this, how it applies in lawsuits to the courts, international courts, and especially the decision of the European Court for Human Rights that was on the 1st of March, that there was written that, that the court not only banned Russia from using weapons against civilian objects in Ukraine, and it's school, transport, houses, hospitals, etc. But of course, Russia, we understand that it will not meet the requirements, and we see that the whole March they're bombing Ukraine all the time, and they're violating. But I think that, and our organization think that definitely he can be punished, and he will be punished for all he's doing. But we need time. We need to collect these violations. We need to collect the information, the data about the detained people, about bombing, about the war crimes that were documented, by the way, in the Media Initiative for Human Rights and in Ukraine 5 AM initiative. So I deeply believe, that it will be done, and one day he will stand in front of the human society, and will be punished for everything he is doing. I mean that the president of Russian Federation, and by the way, the Russian Federation.
One day, Lily, you say one day. How long should we wait for this? For example, Georgia. There was war, Russian-Georgian war in 28, and only now they win some in some courts. How long we should wait for our, I don't know, not for our, but for punishment of Putin?
I think that we shouldn't wait. We just have to do everything to make it happen, because we really don't know the time it takes. We make everything to make it faster, to make it move forward, to gather this data, to proceed it to the international courts, to proceed it to our security service of Ukraine, especially. We are also communicating and cooperating with them, giving them the list of detained people, the list of prisoners, civilian prisoners and political ones, and about all this data that we're gathering, documenting crimes and fixing them, war crimes, so that are violations, gross violations of the international humanitarian law. And by the way, it is the violations of militaries against civilians. So our thing, is to collect data, is to pass it to the to people who really can judge. And after all, I think that, it's like unbelievable. It may seem unbelievable because, he's doing a lot of awful, terrible things all over the world. I mean, the president of Russia. But one day, I don't think that we have just to count these days. We just have to do work on that, and work on that.
And you said, Lily, you say about punishment of Russian military, Putin, but can be, for example, Lukashenko punished because he made a really big step and really helped a lot in this war, Russians?
I think, that everybody who helps and who will help Russia in this war against Ukraine and against the whole humanity, they will all be punished, because all the data we are gathering, especially, for instance, the latest material and analytical material that we published is about evacuation of people from Mariupol that is led to Belarus and to Russia, and people are not led to go to Ukraine, only to Russia or to Belarus. So it means that those countries are really supporting this Russian aggression. Belarus and other countries who will support it, they will also be punished. So we gather all this data, we gather everything, and all this data will be proceeded to all other international institutions, both to Ukrainian, of course, law enforcement and other courts in Ukraine. So I think that it will help, and I believe that it will help. So too many people are working on that, too many people all over the world, not only in Ukraine.
It's really very important work. Thank you, Lily, for your explanations. I'll remind our viewers it was Lily Chilitska, Media Initiative for Human Rights Analyst. Also would like to give you opinion of one of the experts that was online also in our program. It was Edward Lucas. He's an author, specialist in security, and let's listen to him.
Well, I think the real thing is that the Russian fakes aren't working very well. Certainly not in Europe, in North America, and in the other Western countries. For years, we were really worried about this Russian disinformation machine, which was supposedly so clever and so brilliant, and they interfered in the American election and were pumping out propaganda in all sorts of countries and often having an effect. And now it's not. People see the situation for what it is. They see that Ukraine is the innocent party here and is fighting really bravely, and that Russia is the attacker and fighting with great brutality. And that's the narrative that has stuck. And nothing that the Kremlin's really done, whether it's on the so-called, the Nazi, Ukraine is run by Nazis and drug addicts, or any of the false flag operations are going on, or that there's American chemical weapons labs. They're just not penetrating through into the mainstream. What worries me is they do work in other parts of the world. So I was really horrified to see. I think that Russia is threatening all sorts of things. We see Putin talking about weapons of a kind we've never seen before, and that can be a big cyber attack. It could be the use of chemical weapons. It could be nuclear weapons. And the aim here is to intimidate the West, and it's really important we are not intimidated. The ability of the Kremlin to set the agenda is astonishing when you think how weak Russia is. Russia is so much smaller than the United West. If they launch a cyber attack on the United States or on any other NATO country, we should respond very toughly, and there's a great deal more that we could do. I'm glad that NATO is having this emergency meeting. I'm sorry, I think the NATO response is not yet adequate. You are fighting to defend NATO. You're fighting to defend the European Union. And we are not doing enough to help you. We need to do more, particularly with air defenses. But we need to be absolutely clear. Ukraine must win this and Russia must lose. And we have to do everything necessary to make that happen.
Also was online U.S. Embassy Press Attaché Daniel Langenkamp. Let's watch also what he said about situation now in Ukraine and about help of USA to our country. Let's watch it.
We've ever seen this kind of unity in NATO in decades, and it's a good thing for Ukraine. You can see NATO members all across the board trying to do whatever they can to bring assistance to Ukraine in their own way, the United States providing its contributions, but other countries all across the board doing whatever they can. And I think you're going to continue seeing that until this stops. The United States made some announcements today, more humanitarian assistance. That's very, very important. And really, this won't stop. I have seen this assistance coming in myself, and it is really inspiring. Of course, without the passion that you see, without the dedication and the courage of the Ukrainian people, this wouldn't mean anything. And so really, I would like to turn attention to what Ukrainians are doing on the ground, fighting for their country. It is an incredible display of patriotism and courage that we're seeing today in Ukraine. We are looking at an additional package of sanctions that's going to be announced that will relate not only to political figures. So we're talking about the Duma in Russia. A package of sanctions will come out against them and against oligarchs, so that individuals will be sanctioned as well as entities, and we'll see that released in the immediate future. The G7 is also meeting in Brussels, and they will cover a number of really important, critical issues that will deal with the global energy picture, for example, the global food security picture, so that we can make sure that food is delivered around the world, but also attack Russia on this issue. And then, I think what we're going to see in Poland is, the president checking in with the Polish government and making sure that we're on the same page, that we have some of the same ideas about how to not only back Poland, but also get assistance into Ukraine, security assistance and humanitarian assistance.
Our new guests join us online. Maria Mezentsev, Member of Parliament of Ukraine. Hello, Maria.
Good.
Thank you that you joined. Yeah, thank you that you joined today. And I ask you just to turn your phone horizontal way, please.
Yes,
yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's great. Thanks a lot. Your opinion about visit, Joe Biden's visit in Europe. Yesterday we saw NATO summit. Today he is in Poland. What do you think? Will it bring us some results, better results than we have to stop this war and Russian occupation of Ukraine?
Well, I think, first of all, it is very timely. It is very needed. Moreover, both countries you've mentioned, the US and Poland, are the members of a very strong alliance, which is Northern Atlantic Treaty Organization, which stands for NATO. Ukraine has paved its way many years ago and will try to continue this path regardless the security challenges which we are facing. And you know, in our recent trip with the so-called Women Diplomatic Battalion to London and Strasbourg, where we've been meeting with ministries of Foreign Affairs, Ministry of Defense of UK, 27 member states of the EU, and 46, well, without Russia, in the Council of Europe, we've been hearing one question. If Ukraine stops at the point of, you know, moving towards NATO, cooperating with NATO, what would be the security guarantees? And that's really something which touches upon our mutual cooperation with the partners, where President Zelensky takes a leading role, of course, and he talks to these leaders, which we see in these footages every day. We help him in the developments of the parliamentary dimension. That's why you will be seeing a small group of parliamentarians traveling to US very soon, another group covering other countries in Europe, which are still, you know, in the dimension which role should they take, like France, for instance, Slovakia and other countries. Of course, these trips are very important in the same manner as the one that you probably have seen yesterday, where the speakers of Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, and Georgia visited the Parliament of Ukraine during the session being in full swing. Of course, direct threats, which we've been hearing from Russian representatives towards Poland, not only at this, you know, political discussions, evening TV shows, but also from representatives of the parliaments who are high officials. We are used to that as Ukrainian parliamentarians, but I don't think that the West would ever get used to be hearing something like, you know, tomorrow we're going to be dropping at you some number of missiles. Yeah, that's unacceptable. But in the same manner, it's unacceptable for Ukraine as a very trusted and solid partner, which is a shield right now for the whole security of past Second World War, let's say, dimension and structures, both EU.
Maria, really, it's a shield. Maria, really, now Ukraine is a shield for Europe and for the whole world. Your opinion? We heard that President of France, Emmanuel Macron, he said that French companies should decide for themselves whether they should work with Russia or not. What do you think? Companies must decide, or government must decide? How?
That's just, you know, that's just terrible. It has to be an answer with one sentence. Every penny which is contributed to the Russian business, well, these international companies which are still remaining in Russia, and we have a very clear list from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine, and we're pushing them hard in our Twitter accounts, in social media, engaging our communities across the globe. If they choose to be present in Russia, it is equal to be financing this bloody war against Ukraine. Every penny paid to international companies which are remaining in Russia are coming back to Ukraine, to innocent people, in bloody bullets and in bloody shellings of the missiles of different kinds, which are prohibited by every possible convention or conduct of war. That's why, you know, we have the list of these companies. We know the names. The very recent example, the very disappointing example, and very picturesque example for Leroy Merlin, or whichever this company is called, the French company, which was located in the trade center, which was hit at the daytime in Kiev, in the heart of Europe. Well, I think that's the best way to show that this war is not only about Ukrainians. This war is about every citizen of the free world. And this solidarity has to be taken further to let's say extravagant support in terms of weapons, extravagant support in terms of second layer sanctions, and extravagant support. Why I'm saying extravagant, why this adjective comes to my mind? Because, you know, at every meeting we're having, even after passing these decisions, they still don't believe they managed, because no one believed in shutting down Nord Stream 2. No one believed that the sanctions for the Central Bank of Russia would be ever manageable. Now we have to go to SWIFT for bigger banks which are subsidizing this war. It's the Gazprom Bank and Sberbank. So we have to, we really know where we have to be focusing. As you rightly said, the companies which are still present in Russia, the banking system. I'm sorry, when I'm hearing that 60 billion were frozen in Switzerland, I'm very sorry. It's a joke. It's 2% of those money which have to be frozen for real. And I'm sure the parliamentary group of Friendship with Switzerland will put an eye on that and definitely do the parliamentary control of this issue. That's why it doesn't have to be, you know, general sentences like, oh gosh, we are in the war, please help us. No, no, no. We have a very clear plan, and us as parliamentarians, we will keep on fighting in diplomatic arena, in the field of exaggerating this level of support, humanitarian aid and weapons. I'm sorry, I can't tell you which exactly weapons, but we all understand that if we receive enough to protect our sky, we'll do the no-fly zone ourselves. We know how good the Ukrainian army is.
We understand the real situation. Really important now to tell the whole world about the real picture. So thank you for your explanations. Thank you that you joined
Thank you very
today.
much. Thank you very much.
It was Maria Mezentseva, member of Parliament of Ukraine. And you know, military experts and politics from different countries warn of possible usage of the chemical weapon by Russia in Ukraine. Is it possible? Is it not possible? Our correspondents will show you the material.
Russia is likely to use the chemical weapon after having used the white phosphorus munitions. Both of these kinds of weapons are banned by the international conventions. Volodymyr Zelensky stated this in his recent appeal to the Japanese government. According to him, the enemy is preparing a chemical attack, possibly using sarin, which has already been used in Syria. After all, after the failed Blitzkrieg, and against the backdrop of growing military incompetence, Moscow is raising the stakes. Occupants have already dropped phosphorus bombs on peaceful cities in the Luhansk and Kiev regions. When exposed to human skin, burning white phosphorus causes severe chemical burns. The lethal dose is only 0.15 grams. But you can survive such an attack. A shelter or house will save you, but only with tightly closed windows and doors.
In no case should you touch the particles of phosphorus with your bare hands, which may be on the skin or on clothing. Do not use any objects such as tweezers or anything else to remove particles of this phosphorus. If possible, be sure to submerge the injured body part underwater, or pour plenty of clean running water over the affected area. It is necessary to take any sorbent along with water, whether it is ordinary activated coal or white coal, any other sorbent that are available, and it is also advisable to take painkillers if you have any. But the main thing is to get specialized medical care as soon as possible.
Clothing that has phosphorus particles on it must be removed. It is forbidden to use cotton wool, bandages or hydrogen peroxide.
Phosphorus weapons are not chemical weapons, they are incendiary weapons, the weapons of mass destruction, but not chemical ones. And this is the main difference. Regarding the stocks of chemical weapons in the Russian Federation, there is such information it is impossible to guarantee that they are 100%, but the intelligence of different countries, including NATO intelligence, knows about the main stocks of the chemical weapons of the Russian Federation.
Today, the aggressor country is actively conducting propaganda among its population, allegedly about Ukrainian scientists developing chemical weapons. Experts believe that the Kremlin is preparing an information springboard in order to accuse official Kyiv of its own crimes.
Even the United Nations today does not exclude that the briefing of the Russian Federation in relation of biological laboratories may be one of the likely stages in the preparation of a group of hawks of the Kremlin for possible biological chemical operations on the territory of Ukraine. Mikhailo Podolyak, the advisor to the head of the office of the President of Ukraine, on Telegram.
The use of the chemical weapons in Ukraine is unlikely. Military expert Oleg Zhdanov assures of it. Indeed, in this case, Russia will probably receive a harsh response from the world community.
Even Hitler did not dare to use chemical weapons, although he had artillery supplies ready and an aerial bomb project was ready to use chemical weapons, so I believe that the probability is not that great.
However, the example of Syria shows that Russia does not hesitate to use chemical weapons, predominantly containing substances of nerve paralytic action, such as sarin, chlorine, zaman, tabun, the Novichok gas and V gases.
We must know and understand that chlorine is heavier than air. It also can accumulate on the lower floors, and ammonia it is lighter than air and accumulates on the upper floors of buildings.
The radius of impact of one chemical bomb is on average of 500 meters. The exposure time is from 2 to 8 hours. It is more effective to use it in open areas. This means that most likely the positions of the Ukrainian military may be under attack.
For example, in Aleppo, Syria, the use of chemical weapons made sense, because they have one-story houses, and they do not have glass in the windows, they usually just hang with sheets, that's all. There the penetration of gas is very high, and a group strike is used 3 or 4 bombs, but they can cover 1, 2, maximum 3 blocks, not more.
A person cannot understand what type of weapon the enemy has used on its own. That's what warning systems are for. However, they will work only in the case of preliminary information from intelligence or after the strike. Reported by Yulia Granovska, Larisa Zubenko, Pavlo Shtelmach for UATV News.
And also want you to show faces of Ukrainian women which protect our country. Let's watch our material.
Albina. 10 years ago, she started her career in the manicure service. In January, she bought a bike. At 5 a.m. on the 24th of February, she woke up from the words, "Wake up, a war has begun." Albina didn't rush to the border. She found the good hands for her cat and went to serve in the territorial defense. Now she's a paramedic, and her all sign is Shark. Anna. She was a military lawyer. After serving in the army in 2018-2021, she retired, traveled across Europe, started working with horses, but as soon as the war started, Anna came back. Each one should do his job, she decided, and today she is in the headquarters of the Territorial Defense Unit. Miroslava. She had just come home after the trip around Ukraine when the war began. In the morning, she was already driving with neighbor and kids away from Kyiv. But halfway through, Miroslava understood that she couldn't run. So after taking her son to a safe place, she came back. She's defending the city along with the volunteers and armed forces and still receives invitation to go to safe places in Hungary, Poland, Italy, Germany, Turkey, but she stays at home. Oksana. Successful lawyer, deputy assistant before the war. Nowadays she works at one of the headquarters of the Territorial Defense. She's good at logistics but always ready to take the gun. Her father is in the Territorial Defense of Khmelnytsky region. Her brother serves at the Armed Forces of Ukraine. Defending Ukraine became a family business. These are just a few Ukrainian ladies that became the heroines of the photo project Важлива, the important. The author, photographer Katerina, for 9 years gathers women without any borders, service women, Paralympic sports women, regular mothers. But when the war began, Katerina found new inspiration for her project, because each one of these women are important, and along with fight for freedom, Ukrainians represent force, beauty, and inviolability.
So these women also fight for their land and for freedom of Ukraine. It was you in English, Anna Nichenka. See you tomorrow.